Hello, hello. I'm going to adjust my cameras here a little bit. I'm on a couple of different ones. And let's see, I think I'm going to reposition this guy right here. There you go. That way it's a little easier for me to read everybody's comments. And I wanted to have a few of my notes opened up, and they're on my phone because I'm techy like that. Okay. All right. How's everybody doing? I'm ready to get started. If you're jumping on, please go ahead and tell me who you are. Tell me where you're from so I can make sure if I'm not able to call you out by name during the broadcast, I would love to be able to circle back around and tell you hi afterwards. I always like to come back and look for questions and comments and other people's insights and experiences with anything that I talk about. My name is Angel Balance. I'm Life Fit Mama, and you're watching this replay on my Facebook page. So I'm excited to come in here and kind of talk about something that is not really a hot topic to talk about in social circles. But I do understand that the more people I'm talking to on a regular basis actually deal with these same issues that not a lot of people realize I suffered with for a very, very long time. In fact, part of my story, I'll go ahead and tell you, is that I remember my very first, I don't know, I've had heartburn and reflux like since early childhood. I mean, I remember being laying in bed and having very intense heartburn and asking mom, I can't go to sleep. What do I need to do? And her telling me, have some bread, have some milk. And I've shared that before on one of my other lives, but I've never really talked about how I naturally got rid of it and other things. So I listed on there IBS, which is short for irritable bowel syndrome. Now, while I was never formally diagnosed with irritable bowel, I had all the symptoms. So to help you understand the kind of symptoms that I'm talking about imagine taking a very intense laxative and in the middle of the night waking up with extreme intense cramps and having to immediately, and at the same time, nausea, okay, and having to run to the restroom. I remember years ago, the first time I ever saw a celebrity go on TV and actually talk about her experiences with this, and I thought, wow, they're talking about this on TV, and that sounds a lot like me because it was a constant, endless cycle of going from the feelings of bloating and inflammation and constipation and troubles with my bowel movements from slow to way too fast. Because what would happen is whenever I would wake up in the middle of the night with those intense cramps, I would run to the restroom and everything would come out both ends. I know that's a lovely picture, but I made sure to put on there as the description gut health and IBS so that nobody would be surprised if I started talking about diarrhea and constipation and these types of not so pleasant images that we get in our heads whenever we talk about it. But it was, as you can imagine, it was a very intense, very embarrassing thing to be dealing with, very uncomfortable and stressful. I remember for irritable bowel, for specifically with the types of those kinds of episodes, I always called them episodes, where it was both ends and it would take hours. I mean, like some hours in the restroom. I would be in the restroom in the middle of the night, 2, 3, 4 hours, and literally just wait for my entire system to empty out. And I remember the first time it happening, I was 13 years old. It was the summer before my 8th grade year. And if truth be told, I believe that it came upon as a result of some very high emotional stressful environment that I was in at the time, because later on I learned that it was that everything that I was experiencing in the gut was also stress related. It was diet related and it was stress related. So I want to be able to let you know that I have very personal experiences with these episodes and these symptoms and these very uncomfortable types of symptoms, illnesses, diseases in the body, and that they were going on for a very long time, all the way up until some of them, I remember dealing with them through my wedding day, my honeymoon night. I remember dealing with them all the way through. The heartburn and reflux I dealt with. I remember my gastroenterologist back at home putting me on Nexium, the purple pill, for several years. And I took that pill every day through my entire first pregnancy. And it wasn't until she was about maybe about 6 weeks after, when life kind of started to normalize after having a newborn, that I realized that I had stopped taking it. And hadn't been taking it since I'd been home from the hospital. And then with the, but I stopped. I just made the decision that I wasn't going to take it again, and I dealt with the symptoms whenever they would come up. And then with what my doctor said was I had a spastic colon, and that I needed to avoid all acidic foods was actually his recommendation to me. And it's kind of funny because some of what I've done and the research that's coming out now is the very opposite. Actually helped heal both problems between upper and lower, and but for years I avoided onions, and I avoided yellow mustard, and I avoided tomatoes, and I couldn't even tell you all, but every single soda. Lots of foods that he told me, don't do that, and don't drink or eat past, he said, by 8 p.m. at the latest. Don't eat past that time, but definitely he told me eat very small meals frequently throughout the day. Doesn't that all sound kind of familiar to the dieting world? And I tried doing what he told me, but at the same time, he also you got to understand, I was a college student, and I was working lots of hours and studying for college, trying to get through college, graduate with my bachelor's in psychology, and get married and start my master's and all of those things. And I tried my best, and I followed the advice for a very long time, but still, I would still have these episodes. He gave me a little, I was talking to someone in the gym the other night. She was asking me about it, and she was like, didn't he give you anything for the bowel issues, for the chronic diarrhea and the vomiting and all those things? And I said, well, it was always something that would just kind of suddenly come on. And I was never feeling like I was in control of it. I kept trying to understand where it was coming from. People in my life at that time, if we were close friends, you could probably remember, I was trying to figure out, was it red meat? Was it, every time I had a burger? Was it every time I had a steak? No, I couldn't connect the dots. I couldn't figure out what foods were causing these episodes to come on. And you can imagine, I didn't talk to everybody about it, Only my closest friends knew about that, because it was super embarrassing. Nobody wants to hear about it, and nobody wants to talk about that happening, right? So what I did was I just kind of learned how to live with the symptoms. And I continued to try to understand the foods, but never really making a connection. And we're talking, I'm telling you that with the heartburn and reflux, I remember that from childhood, okay, little girl. The first time I remember having the digestive issues with the diarrhea and the vomiting, the IBS type symptoms, that happening, my very first episode was age 13. And I remember it happening and being very scared and not knowing what was going on. but not having any answers, and it resurfaced big time in college in my early 20s. I was working in restaurants. I was manager in a restaurant to pay my way through school to try to avoid as many of the fees as possible, and doing, but my eating at the time was not the best. I mean, it wasn't the best at all. I mean, I drank sodas every day, and I had burgers, and I had stuffed potatoes and salads. I ate salads, and so I always had a love for salad, but then I also had a love for all these other foods too, right? So eventually I had to do something, but I didn't know what. So it wasn't like a targeted thing. It wasn't like one day I decided, hey, I'm going to find a solution to these episodes. Because I didn't think that really it was possible for me to find solutions to these things. Nobody had really offered up one. The doctor himself had not offered up a solution other than he said things that I could do to make it less, but not reverse, not cure, but make it less, so that maybe when it came on, it would be less intense. And I mentioned the pill. The pill, I didn't finish telling you about it. You would tell me to put it under my tongue if I felt like maybe I felt some of the discomfort in my intestinal area, that maybe it would help relax the gut and keep an episode from happening that evening. And I can't really tell you that it ever truly correlated. I remember my bachelorette weekend still having issues, not wanting to go down to the beach area, the pool area, wanting to stay close to the hotel. I remember being nervous about it on our honeymoon. I mean, lots and lots of issues after having babies. It's still having it all the way up until probably a couple of years ago. And it was in this discussion with this lady in the gym the other night. I was like, she was asking me, and I was like, you know what? The last time I had an episode, I can't quite remember. It was probably about 2 years ago. And so it sent me on this journey today to dig into some of the experts that I follow now for nutritional advice in healing the body naturally, and to try to kind of identify some of the things that maybe contributed to my both not having an issue with heartburn and reflux anymore, and also not having issues with those episodes in the middle of the night. And so I wanted to be able to come in here and share them with you, so that maybe if you or anybody else that you know that deals with these types of digestive problems, stomach problems, that you can share this with them. You can let them know, and have them, I mean, don't take my word for it, but I'm just sharing my experience with you. But maybe seek out a nutrition expert. Maybe seek out a functional medicine doctor, someone that will take that approach with you to healing your gut naturally. But these are obviously some things that you're able to put in place right away, because I did them and it was without medication. So let me run through these with you, okay? All right, so the first thing I want to tell you, though, before I run down this list and rattle it off, is literally this takes time. Obviously, I told you that this was something that I suffered with from childhood, and I dealt with it for over a decade, some of them 20 years plus, before relief, and ultimately no symptoms at all all the symptoms were gone completely, and no more episodes. And some of them died off sooner than others. And it was a gradual process. So please be patient is what I would say to any friend asking me, like, what do I do and how long? I would say be patient. It takes time. Things have to happen in the body. And while I'm not an expert, I don't have all the biological, cellular level type answers for you. I can tell you that in digging through through all of the research, and I was able to identify these specific things that I have implemented over the past probably, let's see, some of them I started implementing in very baby steps probably about 7 years ago, and then some of them as early as 3 to 4 years ago, and some of them only just 2 years ago. And I've been symptom free for about 2 years. So, all right, let me share these with you. Number one is, and these are in no order, so not chronological order or anything, just things that I jotted down that I identified as soon as I saw them. Number one is bone broth and collagen. I had started adding bone broth and collagen when I learned about them through a couple of gurus and nutrition and fitness experts, one being Chalene Johnson, another one being Melissa McAllister. I just kind of saw that Melissa always had collagen being added into her daily shakes. And then I heard a podcast that Chalene Johnson did talking about bone broth, the benefits of bone broth. And then also in more recent years, I've learned more extensively about bone broth and collagen through other online experts that you can easily find on YouTube, like Leanne Vogel, Dr. Eric Berg, Dr. John Axe, and also, for some reason, his name is escaping me, but I learned of him like years and years ago. He's the Garden of Life guy and the Maker's Diet guy. Gosh, I can't remember his name. I think it starts with an R. I will have to find him. But anyway, all of these people have spoken extensively about it, and at some point in time have piqued my interest and gotten me started in adding it, because it does help to repair the damaged lining of the gut, and contains L-glutamine, which helps to protect the gut. So number two, the other thing that I did was I added, actually number 2 and 3 kind of can be combined, because I naturally over time started adding a lot more vegetables into my diet. And steaming vegetables, not canned vegetables, was a transition that Donald and I made several years back when I was learning to eat more whole foods, learning to eat to actually cure candida, which is another video for another time. And so one of the things that we were encouraged to do was, if we weren't really big on raw vegetables, was to steam vegetables just until they were about crisp tender, so that more of the nutrients were still being maintained in the vegetable we were able to get out of it. And what happens is, because a lot of the vitamins and everything aren't heated to such a point that they die off, that your gut is able to get the full benefit of them, but also it's able to help break down the protein, the fats, the carbs, and all the things in the body. And then especially leafy greens, of course. One of the changes that Donald and I made over time was going from romaine to leafy greens, like mixed greens, spring mix, your spinach, lots and lots of spinach in our house now. And so cruciferous vegetables, that mainly kind of probably came out because my daughter is huge about broccoli, and my husband loves cabbage, which is another good vegetable that helps heal the gut. And then avocado, we added avocado into, and cauliflower, yeah, because we transitioned into cauliflower rice. I started transitioning into cauliflower rice about a year ago. And so, but avocados, and squash, we do spaghetti squash a lot more than we do pasta. So a lot of trading out those grains for vegetables helped, and those specific vegetables have helped. Another way that another thing I added into my diet a couple of years ago was apple cider vinegar. And what I've learned is that See, I just did it initially because it was supposed to help with aiding in weight loss and naturally detoxing the body. And so I thought, yeah, I need to do that. I need to start learning to do that, right? So I did, but little did I know, it also helps to treat an over-alkaline stomach or a low acid stomach, because contrary to popular belief, you actually do need a good level of acid in the stomach in order to properly break down all your food so that you don't get so much heartburn and reflux and digestive problems. Another thing that we started doing, that I started doing with pride, is adding, whenever I can, we don't buy it normally, but sauerkraut is really good, but I did just start drinking pickle juice again like I'm a little girl. And let me tell you something, I love it. Anytime I have a little digestive discomfort in the opposite directions, more like constipation, drink that up, I'm good, okay? So, but it allows the good bacteria in your gut to flourish, is the scientific answer. All right, so avoiding grains was something that I started some time ago, a couple of years ago, off and on. I started going more like with a higher fat type lifestyle and started eating high fat, low carb. Now, have I been perfect and consistent? No. Do I sometimes, have I in the past couple of years still done holiday dinners where I had full rice and gravy and, you know, roux in my gumbo with the white flour? Absolutely. I'm not perfect. I'm human. Things happen. But I can tell you that several years ago, I started this little program that had little color containers. Many people now know as 21-Day Fix, and part of learning that portion control container system was not just about portion control, but because I had to keep my carbs in its place, it naturally kind of happened for me that my grains were reduced, and therefore the inflammation in the gut was reduced. And then naturally over time, I just started noticing that, hey, Cindy, I started noticing that more and more and more as time was going on, I was dealing less and less with the episodes in the middle of the night waking me up with the severe cramps and the diarrhea and the vomiting and the constant feeling of a sour stomach or discomfort or reflux or whatever, that feeling like, oh, that didn't agree with me, oh, it must have been what I ate, whatever it was, less and less of that was starting to happen. So another thing that I did was a couple of years ago, I started playing around with decreasing dairy and being more specific about the dairies that I choose whenever I do eat it. Now, when I first started that beloved 21-Day Fix system I just referenced, I actually was doing a lot of Greek yogurt in order to meet my protein intake. And there have also been times where I have done a full whey protein recovery shake and seen great results. So I'm not speaking out against it. What I did notice, though, was that I'm just kind of connecting some dots that over the past few years, for my symptoms to go from hardly ever to, from severe and very, very unpredictable and stressful and embarrassing and literally like I need to run home because I need to take a sick day because I can't be at work today because it's coming out both ends and I can't make it stop and I feel weak and I feel, because all of those things were happening even when I was pregnant with my first child. I remember that happening and me being at work and needing to go home. And it wasn't just morning sickness. I did deal with that, but I had those episodes where it was like the irritable bowel syndrome episodes were coming on, and that same thing that I had as a little girl was coming on. The same thing that I dealt with through college, it happened throughout my pregnancy off and on and made me very scared. Okay, so here's another thing that I did. I increased the amount of healthy fish that I eat. And specifically, the experts say wild-caught fish that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids. So that that's like your salmon. So if you eat salmon, 2 or 3 times a week. Good for you. But you know, I don't eat salmon like 3 times a week, but we definitely made a more of a point several years ago to add in fish to our diet. Now, another thing that we did was, of course, we decreased a lot of sugars in our diet. And like I referenced before about how candida is another thing that I dealt with, and a whole nother video for me to do another time, but that when it is something that naturally over the last decade, over the last 5 years, and specifically over the last 2 years, I've really naturally narrowed down to very few items, very specific, like very little, and definitely not in the diet as much. Probiotics. This is actually something that 10 plus years ago, I was told I needed to start taking probiotics for gut health, and I would buy the really expensive refrigerated ones that need to be kept in the dark bottles in the refrigerator, so forth and so on. And I would, you know, hate to have to tell my husband that I had to go and buy those big expensive bottles again. But eventually now I have all my probiotics are in my daily shake, and it comes naturally in my shake. It's not a secret. If you've known me and if you've ever asked me or if you've followed me for a long time, you know I prefer Shakeology as my daily superfood supplement shake that has plant-based protein. I choose the vegan formula, but also it has a lot of these things that I'm mentioning. It has the, I haven't mentioned the healthy fats yet, but it has that. I haven't mentioned digestive enzymes yet and how that has played a role in gut health, but it has that. And then, but it also has probiotics amongst a ton of other things. But probiotics is now the way that I get it into my body every single day is through my daily shake. Okay, so I don't buy the bottles separately anymore. I just take my shake. Another thing that I naturally started implementing several years ago, especially in the last couple of years since discovering the higher fat lifestyle, is coconut oil. And the thing is that coconut oil is just a natural excellent antifungal, antibacterial type food, and so it naturally helps to kill the bad bacteria in the gut, which and then you know helps those probiotics whenever they're trying to restore the good bacteria in the gut, so you have balance again. Green juices. This is another thing. Wheatgrass is also in my shake, my daily shake, and I don't buy it separately. It's just formulated within my shake. But it was one of the things as I was going through the research to try to identify the changes that I've made over time accidentally that have contributed to me being symptom-free now. That's one of the things that I came across, and I thought, well, that's in my shake too. I better jot that down. Don't want to leave that out. No, the other thing is more of a habit thing. I became more mindful about my eating in that when I'm sitting down, I'm chewing. I'm taking my time to chew my food. I can tell you that, especially in those early college days, I was inhaling my food probably a lot more, eating in a rush, eating in a hurry, not fully chewing my food. And it's an interesting fact, but the carbs that we eat naturally, automatically, they are digesting. They start digestion right here. And from what I understand, there's enzymes that in our saliva that are released to help start breaking down the foods like way before you swallow them. But without the chewing, it's like you've skipped some of that digestion process. And so, of course, the gut has a harder time. Another thing is increase in specifically blueberries. But I think it naturally happened that I increased blueberries because I just increased berries and fruit overall. And more specifically in the last couple of years, if I have fruit, I'm more targeted at berries as my first choice. Second choice, every now and then, like after a workout or something, when I crave a strong citrus, I'll have like a little orange or a little apple or something. But most of the time, I'm grabbing a berry. And so that was interesting to me. And that was mostly because of the soluble fiber and the antioxidants. And so let's see what else. Peppermint was another thing. I've sometimes added that into my shake, and my tea, and you can do that too. Peppermint oil or natural peppermint. Exercise, obviously, over the last few years, that is something that has been added into my lifestyle that previously wasn't there. But hydration. No, not one berry, just blueberries is the one berry that they said particularly was really, really good. DeLorean, thank you for asking. Oh, Cindy, thank you for asking that. But berries in particular, I think they said like a pint a week would be really great for your gut. Hydration, of course, drinking lots more waters and water-containing foods. So all your vegetables and your fruits, but even choosing meats that contain a higher water content than others. And then, of course, back to fats. I mentioned coconut oil, but these fats were mentioned. Not the medium chain like how the coconut oil is, but the long chain fats. Like you would get from your olives, your flax, your avocados, because if you're fat deficient, it will also affect your gut. And the other thing, I can say that I've increased those over the last couple of years, specifically with eating the higher fat, but also being very conscious of wanting to go choose foods that are in all the macro a wide array of rainbows in all of my macronutrients being represented, right? And then soluble, the last one, I already mentioned fruits, vegetables, digestive enzymes. So the very last one that they talked about that I can say is one of the first things that my doctor actually told me was one of the problems or one of the triggers to me probably having episodes was stress. And so I've learned how to de-stress and avoid stress and honor the recovery time that my body needs. So that's it. That's my story. If you guys have any questions, I would love to be able to answer them while I'm on and we continue to chat. But if not, I'll circle back around later this evening and maybe tomorrow, and I would love to be able to answer more questions there. So, but if you have a story, if you've had experience with irritable bowel, spastic colon, chronic diarrhea, and constipation, back and forth sluggishness, and or heartburn or reflux or anything, I would love to be able to help you troubleshoot. Obviously I'm not an expert, but since I've lived through these things, I can maybe hopefully share some support and encouragement and insights. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to do that. If not publicly, because I know it's a sensitive topic, then privately is fine too. So, all right. Well, I love you guys, and thank y'all for jumping on and joining in on the chat, and I'll talk to you more later. Bye, guys.